Okay, so I'm going to get started. So, as I mentioned, I'm going to be talking about 4 key essential factors to consider to banish low energy and fatigue. My name is Dr. Lisa Upshaw. I am an acupuncturist, a holistic acupuncturist. I'm also a chiropractor by trade. However, I primarily practice acupuncture, Chinese medicine-based nutrition, functional nutrition, and I do a lot of work with the 7 main chakras to allow for mind-body healing. So that we're considering lifestyle factors, we're considering what's going on mentally and emotionally when looking at your physical health. So that is what I do. And today I'm sharing with you a topic that is very near and dear to my heart, because after having my child, and even if you don't have kids, if you're just a busy student or entrepreneur or worker, you'll understand. But for me, after having my child, I discovered a level of fatigue that I just couldn't have previously imagined. That feeling of just not being able to lift your body up off the couch or out of the bed, or to move at a faster pace when you know you need to get things done. That feeling you have when you're thinking, oh my gosh, I just need to lay down and take a nap because I can't keep my eyes open. Or you're driving and you're like, I need to get some caffeine because I'm exhausted. So I firsthand experienced these issues for the first time in my life after having my daughter, well after I should have been. Of course, after having a kid, you're not getting sleep, you're sleep deprived and you're exhausted. But this was, when she was like, 3, 4, 5, where she was sleeping better. I had a, better structure in my life as a mom, and I should have been feeling better, but I was feeling worse. It was kind of like my health was going in reverse. After having her, I actually felt pretty good, but years later, I think it's the effects definitely of sleep deprivation. I discovered that I was losing my vitality. I hear this really often in my practice as well, where I'm seeing patients on a regular basis, where I always ask what someone's energy is on a scale of 0 to 10. So right now, I'm going to ask you, what is your energy level on a scale of 0 to 10? 10 being high, 0 being none. And I would say that most of the time, I get people at about a 5 or under. I have some patients, though, that really do wake up bursting with energy, and they're at like an 8 and 9. When they go to like a 7, it's usually because they haven't slept well. But 5 and under is definitely low. So if you are there, raise your hand, and then you'll definitely want to listen closely, because these are things that I had to go and uncover about myself. So the first thing I want you to think about is the obvious. Number 1 is, are you getting enough sleep? Everybody says, it is very common to hear that you need about 7 hours of sleep. Some people need more. Now, I will tell you this is very important. If you have an autoimmune condition or some other type of chronic illness, you probably need more than 7 hours of sleep. Going into like 8, 9, or even 10 hours of sleep. Don't feel bad, because some people are like, oh, all I need to do is sleep for 5 hours and I'm good. But you're just not that person, and I'm not that person either. I need good quality sleep. Now, if you have trouble sleeping, I'm going to table that topic for another time, because sleep issues, insomnia, is a whole category in itself. But one thing I will tell you that can help is watching your caffeine intake. Now, caffeine gives you that morning boost, but it can also disrupt your circadian rhythm and throw you off in the evening. Now, some people say I can drink a cup of coffee at 5 o'clock p.m. and go to sleep just fine. Then you know that your sleep is good. You probably just have to restructure your sleep hours to get more. But for someone like me, I'm very caffeine sensitive. So if I had a cup of coffee, I would be awake for 2 days. Another thing I want you to pay attention to is thinking about hidden caffeine. And not so hidden, but caffeine that is not just like, in your face, like this is a caffeinated beverage. Kombucha is one of those things. Kombucha is if you're not familiar, like a health aid drink that has probiotics that is intended for healthy gut wellness. And you see them everywhere. They're very colorful in the store. They are delicious, but they do have caffeine in them. And so what I didn't realize is I was downing kombuchas, but I was getting way more caffeine at like 4 o'clock p.m. and it was throwing off my sleep. I was then staying up till like 1 o'clock in the morning and had to get up, and I wasn't getting enough rest. So that is something that I think is really important to consider, your sleep quality, your caffeine intake, okay? And your rest. Okay, so the second thing that is really important that I'd like for you to consider is whether or not you have an issue with candida. Okay, so candida is a fungus that is very normal to have in the human body. The problem is that because of stressors and diet, the level of candida can get too high and it can burden your body's system. It can create sort of like a dampness. In Chinese medicine, we use the word damp. And if you can imagine something that's damp, it'd be like humidity or like a swampy feeling, a muddy feeling, something that weighs you down. A lot of times we look at the tongue and we see a thick coat on the tongue, and this is an indication of also dampness. Hey there, thanks for joining in. We're talking about dampness and that heavy quality that candida contributes to that can make you feel sluggish. Now, this could also be contributing to your low energy and fatigue. Candida can do all types of things to your body, like cause brain fog, cause forgetfulness, it can exacerbate PMS, it can cause bloating and gas, in addition to slowing you down and making you feel very heavy and tired. Okay, so I want you to consider whether or not you may have a challenge with candida, and I'll talk about some remedies and solutions when I get through the other 2 points. Okay, so the next two, the number 3 would be to talk to either an alternative medicine provider, a naturopath, or a functional practitioner about the possibility of heavy metal toxicity. So if you have been exposed to heavy metals such as mercury, aluminum, nickel. Nickel is very common in stainless steel appliances, aluminum from aluminum foil, mercury possibly from mercury dental amalgams, and fish. Then you want to possibly explore whether or not you may have an issue with heavy metal toxicity. There are different tests that can be done. A urine test is usually the most reliable, but you can also do a hair sample, a hair test that can be given to you through a natural provider that offers that service. I do that as well in my practice, so you can message me if you have any questions about that. But then you can look and see if you have too many of the wrong metals that are taking the place in your body where the metals you really need should be helping you with metabolism. So for example, you need minerals like iron, which is a metal. You need different minerals like magnesium, like calcium. But sometimes when you have metals that you're not supposed to have in excess, it can interfere with the body's usage and the cellular usage and the mitochondria in the cells, and I'm getting a little too scientific, with your body's ability to work effectively, okay? So I want you to consider heavy metal toxicity and look for a practitioner that can help you with that. The last thing that you should definitely look into and sit down with yourself in a moment of quiet and peace is all of your stressors and how they may be impacting your adrenal glands. So if you're not familiar with adrenal glands, or if you haven't heard the word adrenal fatigue, your adrenal glands are little organs that sit on top of your kidneys, and they're responsible for producing cortisol, and they give you that boost and that jolt, sort of like that fight or flight experience, like in the, people always say, in the face of a tiger coming towards you, you would get this rush of adrenaline and you would run. So the adrenal glands are responsible for that. Now, when we get exposed to repeated stressors all the time, whether or not they're good or bad, this can wear our adrenal glands. So as I mentioned before, I talk a lot about chakras. And the adrenal glands are part of the root chakra. The root chakra, as I mentioned in my last Facebook Live, relates to the other structures such as the feet and the knees, the glands, the adrenal glands, and it's really important to look at the lifestyle factors associated with that power center, such as, are all your needs being met? Are you concerned and stressed about work providing enough for you to have the lifestyle that you are looking to have? Are you concerned about your home, the foundation, your ability to stay secure in your home? Do you have challenges with family? All of these issues are related to the root chakra, and they may be stressors that are burdening your adrenal glands. So that's something else to really sit with, you know, when you're like not rushing, maybe a pad and paper, and jot and write some notes down about what is really getting to you. You know, like what is really like irritating and getting under your skin, and what is really causing you stress that's maybe making you stay up at night. Okay, so those are my top 4 essential factors to consider if you're battling low energy and fatigue. Sometimes it's not just as simple as getting enough rest, and so I wanted to go into some other possibilities for you to consider. Now, a couple points and a couple tips for you to address those 4 factors. Okay, number 1, we talked about the timing, how many hours you're sleeping, and caffeine. So obviously, you might need to reduce the amount of caffeine that you are consuming, or have it earlier in the day. I'm more for reducing caffeine, but I know that people like love their coffee like they love their children. So I won't put that on you because we're not in a personal one-on-one session. So try to see if you reduce the amount of caffeine. So maybe go to decaf, or maybe do a half a cup of coffee, or maybe switch to green tea that has a little bit of caffeine, or like a matcha green tea that has more of a time-released caffeine and it's a little bit better metabolized. You can consider that, or just go on to herbal tea or just water. See how that impacts your energy later in the day, because it's usually the later in the day, like 3 o'clock crash, that I'm talking about for most people. And then for sleep, consider meditating before you go to bed. Headspace is a really awesome app that you can download and experiment with some of their shorter durations for meditation. So they have like, you can set it like 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, and then you can go up to like 20 minutes if you want. It helps you get in a rhythm because they'll remind you that you need to meditate, and it helps settle you into sleep. Okay, so for Candida, as I mentioned before, work with an alternative medicine provider, someone who does functional nutrition. In Chinese medicine, it's not the same terminology, but we call it like damp or dampness, which loosely translates into Candida at times. So we are familiar with that as well. So work with someone to help you get out of that and help that get more balanced in your body. Look at sugar cravings, reducing sugar intake, and excess fruit, especially in the morning. That can be problematic if you especially crave sweets. Sometimes it's like the Candida, like craving more sugar for you. So pay attention to that. There's also a tea called Palo Arco tea. Now please check with your medical provider before you take in this tea to make sure that it's appropriate for you considering your conditions. But it's a tea that helps with Candida. It's really helpful. And then moving on to heavy metal toxicity, check into a practitioner that may offer some testing so that you can determine if this is a problem for you. It can be a problem for people that have autoimmune conditions as a possible trigger for autoimmune conditions. So something you really want to note and just explore, okay? And then we talked about the adrenal glands and the root chakra. As you are gonna get to know about me, I love chakras. I love talking about chakras. And so one of my favorite root chakra tips is, as I mentioned before, to like sit in a quiet space and like think about your stressors. But in this case, walk on the beach barefoot, or sit with your tailbone on the ground, just grounding yourself into the earth, crossing your legs, folding your legs, and sit in quiet and peace, and really just reflect on affirming all of the things that you want and not focusing on the things that you